The Merry Pranksters, Chapter 3, Episode 2. As Dickie strums Besame Mucho on his 12-string, Hank does not look up from his phone to state in a measured tone, "Fook, shut the fucking door." Standing breathless in the open doorway, sweat bleeding through his gray Adidas tracksuit, Fookie complies, but not without ensuring that we all see the acquiescence oozing from his face. In a mock surrender, he raises his hands up to say dryly, "All right, Scarface, don't shoot." Wearing only a pair of Ray-Bans and a silver necklace that looks like a string of anal beads, Gonzo lazily stamps out a cigarette in the black plastic ashtray on the table, allowing the smoke to continue burning. The corner of his lip crumples as he looks down on the room, so severely underwhelmed, he's wondering how on earth any part of this band ever carried on without him. After handing Dickie a 12-pack of Budweiser to empty into the red cooler, Fook begins dramatically fanning himself with his Kangol, when subtly, almost suggestively, he asks Hank if he's heard the news about Joey. Panic washes over the dusty living room like a tsunami as Hank and Dickie exchange a brief glance of possible surrender. But then, while Fook is relaying all he knows about Joey's gruesome murder with the certainty of a wooden nickel, Dickie and Hank lower their weapons. Convinced he doesn't know what he thinks he knows, the two of them nod along curiously, waiting to see where this goes. Listening actively, Hank feigned a look of shock at the tragic news without correcting any of Fookie's numerous inaccuracies. When the big fella got to the part about Demean, however, the tale took an unexpected turn that caused Hank's face to soberly drop. Fookie called Demean an ungrateful bastard and sounded as if he had some kind of emotional investment in the case when he said, "That crackhead got what he deserved." A pasty look of pale dread washed over Hank's face. Fookie's eyes widened as he gestured for us all to find a seat. "What? You didn't hear? Yeah, dude, Demean was found dead yesterday. That motherfucker robbed Joey for a ton of coke, sliced him up with a butcher's knife, then did so much fucking blow he dropped dead of a heart attack right there in his living room. Now no one in town can get any fucking yo." Contemplating the meaning of all this, Hank inhales a deep breath. As his eyes raise to the sky in a desperate prayer, Hank has that crushing feeling he's watching the pillars of his tower crumbling. He knows that once the impossibility of Demean rocking up and smoking an entire kilo of pure, uncut cocaine is discovered, it will become clear there's a shitload of unaccounted for blow out there somewhere. He also knows that not long after that, every drug dealer in St. Louis will start asking questions. Questions only Hank and I know the answer to. After a mid-morning beer run, Fook is standing in the middle of the living room like a stumping politician, holding 3 darts in each hand. The brim of his pink fedora is tilted to the side, casting a dark shadow that cuts across half of his face. He straightens out the fletch on the first dart before tossing it, as if he were preaching into a television camera, speaking to both the entire world and no one simultaneously. Fook has a vision, no doubt, of how he's going to navigate us all through this chaotic time, and we're about to find out what it is. "Look, I see this all the time at the law firm." With an annotated voice of righteousness strapped firmly on, he heads off on an epic filibuster that we're all along the ride for. He starts by offering, nay, insisting, with an unknown authority, that we must strike now, hard and fast, slipping in what he describes as our shared concern that some of our new, unknowing fans could get the wrong impression, seeing us play for the first time without the real lead singer. Patrick Fookie assures us he can remedy this problem with little effort. He then begins talking with a contained enthusiasm about a local label that he's been writing depositions for. Sucking in a shallow breath, he says they're called BLACKOUT Records, and they're good people and have decent coke. Motioning with his hands for us to manage our expectations, but not really, he details how he was able to, once again, work his sorcery, getting the label to make us an offer with a reasonable signing advance. I was shocked, but not surprised, when Hank pushed for more specifics. In the same way, I wasn't surprised when Fook started using big words that I had no clue the meaning of and no strength to attempt to find. With Gonzo nodded out on the couch, allowing an unattended cigarette to burn the beginnings of a hole through the stomach of his black Slayer t-shirt, Fookie addressed Hank's concerns in a way that made them seem almost petty. I can see why you might think it's a good idea to wait until the gig to try to score a record deal. Before I knew what I was doing, I could have easily made the same mistake. Praying some corporate label shows up like Prince Charming to make all of our dreams come true. As Fook went on pleading his case, the hints of a smile grew on Hank's face, harder and more stressed, like he was coming close to showing an emotion. Look, Halloween is 3 weeks away, Fookie is saying. That's a lifetime in Merry Pranksters' years. He's not wrong in saying, trust me, we don't want to wait till then. We want to strike now, while the iron is hot, or by the time Halloween rolls around, this whole thing could blow over and no one will care. Searching my pockets for a benzo to combat a growing angst, I looked at Dickie for a reaction, then to Hank, who was less enthusiastic but not quite protesting. Catching himself before the grin grew to a full smile, Fookie finished. Look, don't worry. If we get a better offer later, we can just break the contract. I've seen it before. Dude, this happens all the time. Later, after placing the final Budweiser can on the eye of a giant brewski pyramid, Gonzo stumbled out of the bathroom, sending the fragile aluminum pyramid crumbling to the ground. As if irritated by the commotion, he scratched lazily at his right arm and asked, "Hey, has anyone heard from Joey?" While Hank and I share a flashing glance of mild paranoia, Gonzo's obliviousness was mocked by Fook and Dickie. They heckled him so severely with iron hands, all he could do was shake his head and wonder whether, by the time we got good enough for him to take this band seriously, would there be any band left to rule over or any audience left to hear it. He took a long, desperate drink from a bottle and decided that dreams don't really come true. By the time Armante finally pulled up in the Impala with Ryan Barnes, a small group of protesters had gathered across the street. They were chanting aggressively how we were the new face of Hitler Youth and would not be tolerated, although not one of them was darker than an albino Timbavati lion. We each picked up a golf club from the door, chucked a cooler full of Budweisers over our shoulders, and headed out to the park. After Armante hushed the angry mob with a warm smile, Gonzo flashed Tay a shot of the old stink eye, stole the 7-iron from his hand, and mumbled weakly, "It's my fucking band, bitch." Past the playground, Becky bats her eyes in a cartoonishly exaggerated way towards Armante. He cracks an almost bashful smile, tells her she's looking fine today, but keeps on walking. Barnes pulls his white Hanes t-shirt over his buzzed white hair in a way that has Nyjah extending her usual invitation. He waves her off too, however, both more interested in continuing their heated debate on whether putting Bob Marley ahead of Peter Tosh in the Wailers was a sinister, quasi-racist move or an act of genius. With the dying autumn sun shining down on the park from high above, listening to Tay and Barney having a genuine conversation feels like some pagan baptism. I have to keep reminding myself that there is no deeper agenda at play here. Their aim is true. It's like listening to two retarded kids arguing over whose shit smells worse. The first thing Valerie wanted to do when she walked back into my life was come down here to the park. I realized it had been almost exactly a year because the last thing she said to me as she walked away was this was her favorite time of year. The crisp autumn air carries a slight hint of patchouli as it blows in from the forest that feels like a wispy fairy tale illustrated in the soft watercolors of a picture book. I envision the yellow sunlight gently accenting each strand of dark native hair falling wildly on her pearl white scarf as I hear Val speak longingly of deciduous trees in the fall. They lose everything, but they never seem to die. Speaking of the trees as family, she attributed bravery to them. They not only lose their leaves, but they shed their branches too. Then lowering her voice to a hollowed whisper, you can see them if you look close enough, scattered all over the dying grass like a boneyard. And if you listen closely, you can hear the popping sound of the trees, slowly drifting off into the next world. Knowing she didn't just see that in a meme somewhere, but had an intimate relationship with the natural world that I'll only ever experience on some psilocybin trip blows me away. The way her giggle enchanted the spirits of the forest when she would talk about her childhood on the reservation brought joy to an otherwise cruel world. Then, like the rising of the sun, after an unknown trigger, her smile would quickly vanish, replaced with burning tears. Like flaming arrows shooting across the sky, we casually chipped golf balls back and forth across the park. I noticed there was a tone Fuki used when he was talking about patching things up with Megami. Subtle facial expressions that suggested there was something he was not telling us about that abortion of an interview with April from the Riverfront Times. Almost rhetorically, he asked if we'd ever heard of a new local band called the Hollywood Buskers. When we said no, however, he simply carried on, casually saying, "Ah, well, you know how she is. Megs just wants us to think she's got other offers. It's a common negotiation tactic." Dickie mentioned something about an article he read concerning her perilous journey here from Japan. It was only memorable because he said it was the cute way she was quoted as saying, "What the heck in the world?" While that saga sounds horrific, I'm a sliding blues guitar running up and down the neck. With a 7-iron, I chip a golf ball from the pavilion aimed at a protest sign that reads, "Violence is peace," that slices wide against the wind. The point I'm struggling to get across to the boys is that it seems like we're playing a whole new game now. As the shadows of the forest play a round of grab-ass with the swings beneath the setting sun, I catch a glimpse of one last scene with all of us in it. Walking through in Kanto Park together, it's funny. It looks like a happy scene, with plastic Dracula fangs hanging from the skeleton trees. I'm searching for a way to say, look, while the Hollywood Buskers, I say this with an air of contempt, or whatever they call themselves, could be in the running, think about it. Megami's shit is blowing up right now. She could get any band in the world to play the Halloween gig. Dude, she could make a fucking Oasis reunion happen right now.